We all want to be more productive, squeezing everything we can out of each and every day. But what does productivity look like to you? How are you efficient with your time? And how does that help you in your everyday life? If you listened to last week's episode, episode 39, you heard from several of my guests on how they stay motivated and productive. I love these clips as I learn so much from experts and learning how they structure their day. They make lists, they delegate, they stay focused. It's all so valuable to learn from smart people. So this is a special episode as my producer and I have spent time bringing you these ideas and clipping the answers from my guests throughout the year to this question: what is your top tool for productivity? So before we get to that, I have written a guide with my top productivity tools, and I'd love to share that with you for free. You can go to natalietysdal.com and look for resources. You're going to find that free download there. So you can also find that link in the show notes here to this podcast. On to the show now. And we start with relationship coach Jocelyn Freeman. This was episode 9 of the podcast, very popular episode. We all know that relationships, they're work, right? But with a few adjustments, they can be amazing. And believe it or not, arguments can be better than you ever imagined. I encourage you to listen to this episode for some great tips from Jocelyn and her husband, Aaron. Jocelyn's tip for productivity isn't about keeping lists, not an app, but listen in here to find out how she stays on task.
I'm going to answer it slightly different because people think of productivity as in like, and I love my checklist. Believe me, I'm like a notebook queen. Also, having a clear vision helps productivity. And a lot of people are spreading themselves thin and doing things that don't really matter and feeling overwhelmed with how to prioritize because they're not clear on their vision. So I would just suggest that people spend some time going, what is my vision and what doesn't align with my vision that I can eliminate or I can delegate or I can promise at a later time. You know, being able to manage your time is to also know what aligns with what I'm focusing on now and what doesn't. And we are super clear on what our no's are and what our yeses are aligned with our vision.
And I love that vision as a couple too, that it can be, have an individual and what's your vision.
We actually have a system for that. That's one of our core, we take couples through a process.
This next tip is a big one I have taken to heart, and it comes from Carrie Campakis. She's a mom of 3 girls who uses her experience in her books. She is a best-selling author and blogger. We talk about making connections with your kids. This is one of the most popular downloads of the podcast so far. Very encouraging, packed with ideas. So what did Carrie have to say about productivity? Here you go.
I would say my 2 favorite tools, it's hard to pick one, is, and this is something I think that just has come with age, is to expect a little bit less of myself, because you're right. I mean, even now with what I'm doing, there's so much more required of a writer than 6 years ago when my first book released, because now there's podcasts and social media on top of writing the book and doing speeches and things like that. And so I used to just try to do it all at one time. And now I'm like, no, I can do this many speaking events, or this week I'm going to focus on these articles and I'm going to I feel accomplished, even though I might be accomplishing a little bit less each day. I'm saving some energy for my family. And another thing is to really, like we talked about earlier, have seasons for things. And that has helped me just to kind of cut things off. And so an example is when my first book came out, I had all these speaking events and I just booked whatever came my way. And I was also writing my second book. And I talked to one of my writer friends. I'm like, how in the world are you juggling both of these things? It's so hard. And she said, I have seasons. If I'm in a writing season, I'm not speaking. And if I'm in a speaking season, I'm not writing. And that was such common sense, but it was really enlightening to me. Like, oh, I never considered that as an option. And so with my second book, I learned to do that. I'm like, after the book launches, I'm not writing anything. I'm in a speaking season. I'm doing podcasts and all of that. And also knowing that I know that that's a busy season. That's 6 weeks after a book comes out. And so taking a break after that, I know a lot of writers that will do that because there's so much energy that goes into writing a book and launching it too, that you need that time to regroup and reset and really leaving an open space for that.
Do you know what I love about that? I think everyone can apply that to their life. For instance, the first week of school is crazy. Everybody's trying to figure out their new routines, or maybe it's the first month of school, but to give ourselves enough grace to say, this is going to be busy. I'm not doing coffee or lunches or anything until, for the first 2 weeks of school, but to think about that ahead of time and give
Yes.
yourself that season to just settle in, let everybody get their ducks in order. And then, I had another podcast guest call that compartmentalizing. And I'm just going to have that compartment for now and this one for now. And I love that. I'm going to do more of that. Great.
And I did it when my daughter went. I knew my daughter, she was graduating last May. And so with my editors, I told them, I want to get my manuscript to you, by the end of April, because I'm taking the whole month of May and June off just to kind of focus on getting her ready for college and enjoying the last of her senior year. And I was able to enjoy that month more because I wasn't trying to multitask too many things.
Yeah. And try to make everybody else happy.
Exactly.
Up next, the author of the book, Make Some Noise, Andrea Owen. This was episode 26. If you take a look in the show notes, you can listen to the full episode. We talked about why so many of us play small. It's interesting and yet so frustrating, especially for women. We do this. Andrea talks about owning your story and growing from your story.
I wish it was more philosophical, but honestly, and I'm recently diagnosed with ADHD, which explains so much about how my brain works, but I love and am mildly obsessed with Google Tasks. Really anything like G Suite or Google related, I use because it connects to all of my devices. I use it mostly on my Google Calendar and it connects with my phone. It's basically a to-do list and it's so versatile. Like you can drag and drop, you can add notes. Like it's simple, but robust at the same time, if that makes sense.
So it keeps you on task. Google Tasks. I use everything else in the Google Suite. So maybe I need to look into Google Tasks.
Yeah.
G Tasks.
You can also connect it with your email and then create a task from an email.
Oh, that's
instead
great.
of using your email as a to-do list.
Oh, that is such a problem where the email list just gets longer and then you don't delete one.
And then you mark it as unread. No. I can share my screen with you and show you how it works. I'm like, I love telling people about it. I'm not an affiliate. I don't get paid. I just love helping people with
But G Tasks, and then look into your Gmail of how you can add. Okay. Totally going to do that.
I'll
love it. Thank you, Andrea. Okay. I encourage everybody, Google it. You can learn how to do it.
I should make a tutorial and put it on YouTube.
You absolutely should. I love it. Another very popular episode of the podcast is with an expert in the nervous system. Wow. That's what I have to say about this. I learned so much from Irene Lyon, and apparently all of you did too, as we had so much feedback on this episode. You can only shove difficult things down so far. And you know what's going to happen? They're going to come back up later in your life. We need to pay attention to our own well-being, both mentally and physically. That was episode 31. If you want to listen in, here is Irene's tip for productivity.
So when it's a good day, the night before, I will clear my desk off and I will put stuff away that doesn't need to be there. It's really simple, right? But old Post-it notes that have already been taken care of. I mean, I've got a bill from UPS here that shouldn't be there, but it's still there. So, like I said, on a good day, 24-hour cycle, I will clean everything off and I will I don't even use a journal. I just use old scrap paper that the printer spit out that was useless. And I put it on a clipboard like that. And I will restart what needs to be done the next day on a fresh piece of paper that's recycled. So that would be like more a behavioral thing that I do.
I love
just
that.
To, and it's true. Like when the stuff around you is cluttered, you can't focus on the thing you have to do. And I don't always do that. If I'm exhausted and my eyes are tired from being on the computer all day, then I'm not going to force it. So I'm also letting myself stay in the flow, because sometimes these routines can actually take us out of our natural, authentic capacity. But of course, you don't want it to pile up to the point where you can't find anything.
The next clip is from a friend and a mom who runs an organization called Through the Game. They specialize in the mental health of young athletes, and we know how important that is. I love what they are doing. As many of you know, I am the mom of a D1 collegiate athlete. Our daughter is a lacrosse goalie. The pressure of sports at all ages is so much, and our kids are paying the price. We absolutely have to pay attention to their mental health. That was episode 4. If you'd like to listen, Kathryn has some super advice for not only young athletes, but for all of us.
Yeah, it's funny you asked, because when I read that question, I thought, well, gosh, I'm not that tech savvy. Like I was like, I don't know, but I do know. And you know what it is? I think the best thing for productivity is self-love and self-care. And I'm going to go about this from a different angle. I think we need to have boundaries, know our values, and prioritize. And boy, I mean, there's been times in my life I've lost sight of that, where I've put other people's needs in front of my own, because I'm not a selfish person. And just because you take care of yourself doesn't mean you're selfish. I think I had to really shift my mindset around that. But the more I can take care of myself, go for a walk, take some deep breaths, I'm better. I am more productive when I can do that. And so that's the ticket to me. It's not go, 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 keep up with the Joneses. That's a fast burnout track.
And next, another successful woman who came on the show to talk about the stages of life and how we can maintain and even improve our health at all stages. Dr. Vonda Wright is a double-boarded orthopedic surgeon and the author of 5 books. How does she get it all done?
Sometimes people do ask me how I get it all done.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. There are lots of ways. It could be a whole podcast unto itself. But what I tell young professional women is that you do not have to do it all. I delegate a lot of things in my life. If I have 1 hour free in my life, I would rather hire someone to help me clean my house than buy a new purse, right? If I have to choose where I spend my money, I am going to choose things that buy me time, because I can never get my time back. So if I have a tiny bit of money, I am going to find somebody to help me buy more time. And in doing that, become more productive and less stressed.
Yeah,
and less stressed out. Yeah.
I've never heard it defined that way, where choosing to buy the purse versus this. I've heard many people say, I'm going to leverage myself like that, but I'm the same way. I want to end today with another very special episode on the topic of resiliency. Robyne Hanley-Dafoe specializes in this every day. What makes one person able to bounce back from hardship quicker than others? We all go through hard times, right? And we know that it can make us stronger, but it doesn't always happen for some people. This is a must listen episode if you haven't already heard it. And again, we have linked in the show notes where you can find each of these episodes. You can also go directly to episode 33.
Such a great question. And I think it varies, right? At different seasons and stages of our lives, it's going to vary. When the children were little, it was very brief, right? It was tiny little windows. Now that they're a wee bit older, I find for me, like optimal is to be able to like get a few minutes outside, like outdoors. Like I have to physically leave the house, walk the dogs. And thankfully dogs are great to keep us on a system, right? They let me know that they'd like to go out. So doing that outdoor time is absolutely crucial. Coming back in, listening to a podcast, having that cup of coffee, just having a few minutes, that might be 5 minutes someday. It could be 20 minutes someday. But something that I know is I physically have to get out of the house, come back in that door with my mind made up. And that I find, and again, even rain, snow, it doesn't have to be optimal weather. I trust that system. Now, often what I think happens sometimes is people try to base it on motivation, right? Like, am I going to feel like going for a walk in the morning? Then they see the rain and they're like, I'm not going outside. What I've learned is like, you got to trust your system. I know even if it's raining and I walk for 20 minutes, half an hour, I will feel better. I'll have a clean mind. My heart will be aligned. So you trust your system. Don't rely on our motivation because it's pretty fickle. It doesn't always show up for us.
I love this tip from Robyne on productivity because it's a reminder to put yourself first. Listen to Robyne explain. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. And I hope you are as encouraged as I am after hearing from some of my guests over the past year. Let me know. Drop me an email, a direct message on Instagram, or you can visit my website and we can connect there. I am so appreciative of you and listening to the podcast. I hope you will share it with your friends and subscribe. I wish you well as we head into the new year, and I'll talk to you again next week.